There comes a moment in every conscious creator's life when all the techniques, the teachings, the routines begin to lose their spark. You sit there, staring at your journal, writing the same affirmation for the 100th time, and suddenly, it feels empty. Not because you don't want it anymore, not because the dream has faded, but because something inside you has shifted. The spark that once made every visualization session feel magical begins to dim. The mind starts to wonder if any of this is real, if any of this actually works. And here's the truth that most never talk about. This moment is not a failure. It's not a test. It's not the universe punishing you or withholding your desires to teach you some grand cosmic lesson. It's something far more intimate, something sacred. It's the universe standing still, holding its breath, not because you need to prove yourself, but because it's patiently, quietly, lovingly waiting for you to remember who you are beneath the doubts, beneath the rituals, beneath the trying. This moment is not about doing more. It's about returning, coming back to that still, quiet space within you where everything you've ever wanted already exists, not in the future, but right now. That space where desire is not something distant you're chasing, but a natural extension of your being. The universe doesn't deal in tests. It deals in reflections. And when nothing seems to be moving, it's not because you're being punished. It's because something deep within is asking to be seen, acknowledged, and reclaimed. The universe doesn't test you to see if you're worthy. It waits for you to remember that you already are. We live in a world that glorifies effort, hustle, persistence, action, and while these are not inherently wrong, they become dangerous when brought into the realm of manifestation. Because the moment you start chasing a desire, you've already assumed, even if unconsciously, that it's separate from you, that it's outside of you, that it doesn't yet belong to you. And this one assumption, this tiny invisible belief, is what makes the process feel like an endless loop. Neville Goddard didn't teach us to pursue our desires like we were beggars asking for scraps. He taught us to assume the state of the wish fulfilled, meaning we become the person who already has it. We live from the end, not toward it. The energy of chasing is filled with desperation. It's filled with the vibration of lack. And this is what causes burnout, not because your desires are too big or the universe is taking too long, but because you're trying to get something from a state of being that says, I don't have it yet. That contradiction within you is what creates exhaustion. Not the desire itself, not the process, not the universe, but the identity behind the manifestation. You were never meant to work for what already belongs to you by nature of who you are. When a rosebud blossoms, it does not effort its way into bloom. It simply remembers its nature. It opens, it surrenders, and in doing so, it becomes what it already was at its core. The same is true for you. Your desires are not things you acquire. They are things you awaken to. And the more you chase, the more you affirm separation. The more you rest in being, the more life bends to meet you. Not because you earned it, but because you finally stopped running from who you are. There is an unbearable stillness that comes when the outer world refuses to move. When no matter how many affirmations you speak, no matter how long you visualize, no matter how much inner work you do, reality remains the same. It's frustrating. It's disorienting. And if misunderstood, it becomes the place where people give up. But what if this stillness isn't punishment? What if it's a message? Not from some faraway universe testing your resilience, but from the deepest parts of your own consciousness, the parts that you've buried under routines and effort and trying so hard to get it right. Life reflects you. Always. It is a perfect, faithful mirror. So when reality isn't shifting, it's not because you're failing. It's because your dominant self-concept hasn't shifted. You may be doing all the right things, but if underneath it all you still feel like the person who doesn't have, isn't worthy, or needs to become something else before receiving, then that's the reality you'll keep seeing. Not because the universe is mean, but because it's honest. It reflects what's accepted, not what's desired. And that's the key most people miss. Your life doesn't change when you want something new. It changes when you accept something new as true. When you accept yourself as the person who already has it. So if life feels stuck, don't ask, what more should I do? Ask, what belief am I still carrying as truth? What identity am I refusing to let go of? Because often, it's not that you're off track. It's that you're still operating from the memory of who you were, instead of the truth of who you are now. It's easy to look at the patterns in life and conclude that something's wrong with you. That you're blocked. That you've missed the lesson. That you're somehow not aligned enough, spiritual enough, disciplined enough. But this mindset, while common, is one of the deepest illusions. There is nothing inherently broken about the identity that's creating your current reality. There's just a forgetting, a lapse in memory, a sleep, as Neville would call it. The version of you who keeps repeating the same relationships, the same financial struggle, the same feelings of loneliness or unworthiness, isn't doing it to sabotage you. It's not trying to hurt you. It's simply living from the only concept of self it knows. And that self, the one formed through years of conditioning, pain, culture, repetition is just trying to survive. It doesn't need to be judged. It needs to be seen. Because once it is seen, once it is brought into awareness, something magical begins to happen. You stop fighting with yourself. You stop thinking you need to fix what was never broken. And instead, you begin to gently, consistently, and consciously introduce a new state of being. A new assumption about who you are. One that isn't based on the past. One that isn't rooted in trauma. One that doesn't ask you to prove your worth or hustle for your healing. When Neville said that the world is yourself pushed out, he wasn't asking you to micromanage every thought. He was inviting you to shift the self that's doing the thinking, the identity itself. And once you do that, once you even begin to touch that state of already being, the external world has no choice but to respond. Not because you forced it, but because life is simply a screen reflecting the inner script. Change the script, and the scenes will follow. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from doing everything right and still seeing no movement. It's a spiritual fatigue that hits deep. Not physical tiredness, but soul tiredness. The kind where waking up feels heavy, meditating feels pointless, and visualizing starts to feel more like pretending than believing. This is the point where many either spiral into hopelessness or double down on effort. More techniques, more hours spent trying to feel it real. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Trying harder is often the thing keeping you stuck. Not because the techniques don't work, but because your energy while using them is rooted in the belief that you don't already have what you desire. You affirm because you're trying to fix something. You visualize because you're trying to escape what is. And all of that reinforces the exact identity you're trying to shift away from. Neville never asked anyone to force belief. He invited us to rest in the assumption of the wish fulfilled, to fall asleep in the feeling of the wish already realized. That's not effort. That's surrender. That's faith. That's being willing to let go of control and allow the universe to respond to your new state naturally, not forcefully. Think about it. Does the sun try hard to rise? Do waves effort their way to the shore? Does a seed strain to become a tree? Nature, in its essence, is a process of unfolding, not forcing. And you are nature. You are part of that same rhythm. So instead of trying harder, what if you allowed more? What if you trusted that simply by dwelling in the feeling, even for a few minutes, you are doing more than any amount of mental work could accomplish? Trying harder reinforces the old self. Surrendering opens the door to the new. It's one of the most difficult pills to swallow on the manifestation journey. Time doesn't create reality. Identity does. You've been taught to measure your progress by how long you've been affirming, how many days you've visualized, how consistently you've done the inner work. But the universe doesn't measure in days. It mirrors who you are being right now. And if your inner state is still wrapped in the feeling of waiting, counting, doubting, and wondering where your desire is, then no matter how much time passes, your outer world will continue to reflect that version of you. Not because the universe is cruel, but because it's precise. You don't get what you want because you've wanted it long enough. You get what you embody. And embodiment doesn't take time, it takes decision. A willingness to shift who you are being internally, even if your external circumstances haven't changed yet. Neville said, "Dare to assume you are what you want to be and you will compel everyone to play their part." He didn't say wait until the world gives you a reason to believe. He said dare, meaning choose it now. Step into it now. Speak from it, think from it, act from it, as if it were already true. Because from the level of consciousness, it is already true. The only thing time reveals is what identity you're occupying. That's it. So instead of asking how long will it take, ask who am I being right now? Because the moment you shift that answer, reality begins to bend. Not slowly, instantly. And that shift, however subtle, is the moment the universe starts to catch up. There's a quiet fear that sits in the heart of many manifestors, a fear that maybe the universe has forgotten them, that maybe they're the exception, that somehow others can manifest with ease, but they were left out, abandoned, overlooked. This fear doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it shows up as numbing, as giving up, as pretending not to care anymore because caring has become too painful. But here's what's real. You were never separate from the thing you desire. You were never separate from the power that creates worlds. You are it. You are not a visitor to the universe. You are the universe expressing itself as you. Neville didn't teach connection. He taught oneness. That the imagination is God. That what you feel, accept, and dwell in internally becomes the expression of your outer world. So how could you ever be forgotten by the very power that beats your heart? How could you be tested by something that lives through your breath, your thoughts, your emotions? You are not on the outside looking in. You are the center of the story. And every desire you've ever had is not random. It's a glimpse into what you already are. So when it feels like life has forgotten you, remind yourself, forgetting is something only the mind can do. But your true self, the I am, it never forgets. It waits, patiently, lovingly, until you come back to it. Until you remember what has always been true. There is a moment, and it usually comes after the burnout, after the breakdowns, after the begging, where something inside goes quiet. Not because you've given up, but because you've let go. Not of the desire, but of the identity that was chasing it. And in that quiet, something stirs. A new way of being begins to emerge. One that doesn't seek proof. One that doesn't need signs to believe. One that simply knows. This is the final shift. The one that changes everything. Not because the world outside suddenly flips like a switch, but because your experience of the world does. You walk differently. You speak differently. You stop leaking energy trying to become, and instead, you simply allow yourself to be. And from that state of being, your world changes. Not as a reward, but as a reflection. Your specific person calls. The money shows up. The pattern breaks, not because you did more, but because you finally stopped forgetting who you are. The goal of this journey was never to manifest more things. It was to become someone who no longer questions their power. Someone who no longer waits for evidence to believe. Someone who understands there is no universe out there testing your strength. There is only you. And the moment you remember, life responds. Not slowly, not someday, but now. What part of this message felt like truth to you? Was there a sentence, a moment, or a shift that helped you remember who you really are? Your story matters, and it might be the light someone else needs today. Drop a comment below.